1892, London. The night was suffocating. You are scrubbing a floor until your fingers bleed, praying the shadows swallow you whole. You aren't supposed to be here. 3 months ago, you were Lady Naomi Grace, the toast of the season. Now you are just Ellie, a nameless servant in the house of the man who hates your family most. You think you're safe. You think the soot on your face hides your identity. But then, the Duke stops. He doesn't look at the floor. He looks right at you. And in that terrifying silence, you realize he didn't just see a maid. He saw the lie. This is the story of the woman who tried to hide in plain sight, and the Duke who decided to play her game. The rain in Derbyshire didn't wash things clean. It just turned the coal dust into a slick, black paste that coated everything. Naomi Grace, now simply Ellie, shivered as she stepped off the third-class carriage. Her boots, once fine Italian leather, were scuffed beyond recognition, leaking freezing water onto her toes. She pulled her grey wool shawl tighter. It smelled of wet dog and lye soap, a scent that made her stomach turn, but she forced herself to inhale it. This was her life now, the scent of survival. "Move along, girl, don't block the path," a rough voice grunted. It was Mr. Henderson, the steward of Blackwood Manor. He was a man shaped like a barrel with a temperament to match. "Yes, sir." "Apologies, sir," Naomi murmured, dropping her head. The accent was hard to maintain. She had to clip her vowels, swallow the aristocrat in her throat, and speak from her chest. 3 months. That was how long it had been since the scandal. The Grace treason, the newspapers had called it. Her father, the Earl of Callaway, had been accused of selling naval secrets to the Prussians. He had taken his own life before the trial, leaving Naomi with nothing but a burning house, seized assets, and a name that was poison in every social circle from London to Vienna. She had 2 choices, the workhouse or hiding. She chose hiding. But of all the places to hide, why did fate send her here? Blackwood Manor, the ancestral seat of Julian Thorne, the Duke of Blackwood. Julian. Just the thought of his name caused a phantom pain in her chest. Years ago, before he was the cold, ruthless Duke, and before she was a social pariah, they had shared a season. There had been a dance, a waltz that lasted too long, and a conversation in a garden that hinted at a future. But then he had left for the military, and her father's gambling debts had begun to mount, and the silence between them had solidified into ice. He was known now as the Iron Duke, cold, unforgiving, and he had been the one to lead the investigation into her father. "You there, Ellie, is it?" Mrs. Halloway, the head housekeeper, snapped her fingers, snapping Naomi back to the present. They were standing in the servants' entrance, a cavernous stone mudroom. "Yes, ma'am." "You're scrawny," Mrs. Halloway observed, circling her like a horse trader. "Hands are too soft. You've never done a day's work in your life, have you?" Naomi's heart hammered against her ribs. I worked in a millinery, ma'am. Stitching, not heavy lifting." "Well, you'll lift here. The Duke arrives tonight from London. The house must be immaculate. You're on great duty. Clean the fireplaces in the east wing, and stay out of sight. His Grace does not like to see the help unless he calls for them." "Yes, ma'am." The next 4 hours were a blur of agony. Naomi's hands, once accustomed to playing the pianoforte and holding embroidery needles, were now raw and black with soot. She scrubbed the marble hearth of the library, her back aching with a ferocity she had never known. She was on her knees, scraping at a stubborn patch of creosote, when the heavy oak doors creaked open. The room went silent. The air pressure seemed to drop. Naomi froze. She knew that walk. Even after 3 years, the heavy, rhythmic strike of those boots was etched into her memory. She didn't look up. She couldn't. She made herself small, hunching over the grate, smearing more ash onto her cheek as a disguise. "Your Grace," Mrs. Halloway's voice was trembling slightly. "We didn't expect you until the evening train." I rode ahead, a deep, baritone voice replied. It was him. Julian. His voice was rougher than she remembered, stripped of its youthful lightness. It sounded like gravel grinding under a carriage wheel. "Leave me. I require whiskey and silence." "Of course, Your Grace." "Ellie," Mrs. Halloway hissed. "Out. Now." Naomi scrambled to her feet, keeping her head bowed so low her chin touched her chest. She grabbed her bucket and brush, her knuckles white. She moved toward the servant's door, her heart beating so loud she was sure it echoed off the vaulted ceiling. She was almost there, almost safe. "Wait." The single word was like a whip crack. Naomi stopped. She didn't turn. She stared at the intricate pattern of the Persian rug, praying to a god she felt had abandoned her long ago. "You missed a spot," the Duke said. Naomi swallowed dryly. She turned slowly, keeping her eyes fixed on his boots. They were mud-splattered, riding boots. "Begging your pardon, Your Grace. I will attend to it immediately." She dropped back to her knees, crawling toward the hearth. She could feel his eyes on her. It was a physical weight, burning into the back of her neck. She scrubbed at the clean stone, her hands trembling. "Please don't look at me. Please don't look at me." She sensed him move. He didn't walk away. He walked toward her. The boots stopped inches from her hand. "Stand up," he commanded. Naomi's breath hitched. "Sir, I—" "Stand up." Slowly, painfully, she rose. She kept her gaze on his cravat. It was slightly crooked. "Look at me." She couldn't disobey a direct order. Not if she wanted to keep this job. Not if she wanted to eat. Naomi Grace lifted her head. Time unspooled. Julian Thorne was more terrifyingly handsome than the newspapers suggested. His dark hair was wind-blown, his jaw set in a line of granite. But his eyes, those piercing, storm-grey eyes, widened by a fraction of an inch. He looked at the smudge of soot on her nose. He looked at the rough servant's cap covering her golden hair. He looked at her chapped lips. For a second, she saw recognition flash like lightning. He knew. He knew exactly who she was. The daughter of the traitor. The woman he had once courted. Naomi braced herself for the explosion. She waited for him to shout, to call the constable, to have her thrown out into the rain. But the explosion never came. Julian's face smoothed over into an unreadable mask. His eyes narrowed, the warmth vanishing, replaced by a cold, calculating curiosity. "What is your name?" he asked softly. "Ellie, Your Grace," she whispered. "Ellie," he repeated, rolling the name around his mouth as if tasting the lie. "You have unusual eyes for a housemaid, Ellie." "They're just eyes, sir." "Violet," he corrected. "Rare. I once knew a woman with eyes that shade." Naomi stopped breathing. Julian stepped closer, invading her personal space. He smelled of rain, expensive tobacco, and danger. He leaned down, his voice dropping to a murmur that only she could hear. "Clean the grate, Ellie, and then bring the whiskey to my study. You are promoted. You will be serving me personally this evening." He turned on his heel and walked away, leaving Naomi standing in the ashes, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. He knew, and for some reason, he was going to torture her with it. The servants' quarters were buzzing with gossip. "Promoted? On your first day?" Mary, a scullery maid with red hands and a suspicious nature, glared at Naomi over a bowl of watery stew. "It's unnatural. What did you do? Flash your ankles at him." Naomi stared at her spoon. "I just cleaned the grate, Mary. I suppose he likes thoroughness. The Duke hates everyone, the cook, Mrs. Gable, interjected, slamming a cleaver into a side of beef. Since the war, and since that business in London with the traitors, he trusts no one. He's fired 3 valets in a month. Watch yourself, girl. He's like a wolf. He plays with his food before he eats it. Naomi felt a chill that had nothing to do with the draughty cellar. He plays with his food. At 8 o'clock, she smoothed her apron. She had scrubbed her face raw, removing the soot, hoping that perhaps looking clean would make her blend in more, not less. She knocked on the heavy mahogany door of the private study. "Enter." She slipped inside. The room was dimly lit, illuminated only by the fire she had cleaned earlier, and a single lamp on the desk. Julian was sitting there, reviewing a stack of ledgers. He had discarded his coat. He was in his shirt sleeves, the white linen stark against the gloom. "The whiskey, Your Grace," Naomi said, her voice steady despite her fear. She placed the crystal tray on the side table. "Pour it." He didn't look up. Naomi's hand shook as she lifted the decanter. The heavy crystal clinked against the glass, a singular, sharp sound in the quiet room. "You're trembling," Julian observed. He finally looked up, leaning back in his leather chair. He watched her with that same predatory intensity. "I am nervous, Your Grace. It is an honor to serve you." "Is it?" He stood up. He was tall, towering over her. He walked around the desk, closing the distance. "Tell me, Ellie. Where are you from?" "The north, sir. Near York." A lie she had rehearsed 1,000 times. "York," he mused. "And your parents?" "Dead, sir. Fever. Tragic." He took the glass from her hand. His fingers brushed hers, calloused skin against her raw knuckles. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through her that was almost painful. "You speak very well for a girl from York whose parents died of fever. Your diction is impeccable." "My mother was a governess," Naomi lied quickly. "She taught me to speak proper." "Properly," he corrected. "Properly," she whispered. Julian took a sip of the whiskey, his eyes never leaving hers. "I have a task for you. My previous valet was incompetent at organizing my correspondence. I need someone who can read quickly and sort the wheat from the chaff. Can you read, Ellie?" "A little, sir. Don't lie to me." His voice dropped an octave, dangerous and soft. "I saw you glancing at the titles on the shelves when you came in. You were reading the spines. Dante, Milton, Plato." Naomi stiffened. He was trapping her. "I can read, Your Grace." "Good. Sit." He pointed to the chair opposite his desk. "Sir, it wouldn't be proper." "Sit." Naomi sat. She perched on the edge of the velvet chair, feeling like an imposter in her coarse grey dress. Julian shoved a stack of letters toward her. "These are invitations. Balls, galas, charity dinners. The vultures of London society trying to pick at my bones. Read them. Tell me which ones are worth my time." Naomi looked at the letters. The handwriting was familiar. The looping scripts of the ton. She saw names she knew. Lady Margaret Fortescue, the Earl of Derby. People she had dined with. People who had turned their backs on her the moment her father was accused. She picked up the first one. "An invitation from Lady Genevieve Sterling, a masquerade ball in honor of her birthday." Julian let out a dark laugh. "Genevieve, the woman has been trying to trap me into marriage for 3 seasons. What does she say?" Naomi read the flowery prose. "She promises a night of mystery and unmasking, where hearts may be revealed." "Garbage," Julian muttered. "Burn it." Naomi hesitated. "She also mentions that Lord Harrington will be there, the Minister of Defence." Julian froze. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly from mocking to deadly serious. Harrington. Yes, sir. Keep that one. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. You have a sharp eye for politics, Ellie. Most maids would have focused on the masquerade. I thought the minister might be important to a man of your station. Julian leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. Tell me, Ellie. Do you miss it? Miss what, sir? The masquerades, the silk dresses, the music. Naomi's heart stopped. He wasn't just hinting anymore. He was dangling the truth in front of her face. I don't know what you mean, Your Grace, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I have never worn silk. Julian stood up abruptly, the chair screeching against the floor. He walked to the window, looking out at the rain-lashed night. I knew a woman once, he said, his back to her. Naomi Grace. She was the most beautiful creature in London, proud, intelligent, and the daughter of a monster. Naomi gripped the arms of the chair so hard her fingernails cracked. She said nothing. They say she disappeared, Julian continued. Some say she fled to France. Some say she threw herself into the Thames. But I never believed that. She was a survivor. She was the kind of woman who would walk through hell if she had to. He turned around. The firelight cast half his face, in shadow. If she were here, right now, do you know what I would say to her? Naomi felt tears pricking her eyes. She fought them back. No, Your Grace. I would ask her, Julian said, walking slowly back toward her. Why she didn't come to me. Why she thought I would believe the sins of the father stained the daughter. He stopped in front of her. He reached out, his hand hovering near her chin, as if he wanted to tilt her face up again. But he pulled back at the last second. But she isn't here, is she? Just you, Ellie from York. Just Ellie, she choked out. Very well, Ellie, you may go, but be back here at 6 a.m. sharp. We have work to do. And Ellie? Yes, Your Grace. Don't try to run. The roads are flooded, and I have men watching the gates. You are safe here, as long as you stay where I can see you. Naomi fled to the room. She ran down the servants' corridor, her breath coming in sobbing gasps. He knew. He absolutely knew. But he hadn't exposed her. Why? Was he keeping her as a prisoner, a plaything? Or was he protecting her from something worse? As she reached her tiny attic room, she didn't notice the shadow detaching itself from the alcove near the kitchen. Mr. Henderson, the steward, stepped into the light. He held a piece of paper in his hand, a telegram. He looked at the direction Naomi had run, then down at the paper. Reward, £500, for information leading to the capture of Lady Naomi Grace, wanted for questioning regarding the Calloway treason. Henderson smiled, revealing yellow teeth. Well, well, he whispered. Looks like the little bird has flown right into the cage. The dawn at Blackwood Manor did not break. It bruised the sky with a sullen, purple light. For Naomi, the day began not with the sun, but with the chime of the scullery clock at 4 in the morning. Her hands, once celebrated in society columns for their dexterity on the ivory keys of a grand piano, were now swollen. The lye soap had cracked the skin across her knuckles, creating a road map of red fissures that stung every time she plunged them into the wash basin. She stood in the cavernous laundry room, the air thick with the smell of wet wool and starch. Scrub, wring, repeat. It was a meditative torture. It allowed her mind to drift back to the library, to Julian's eyes. Why hadn't he exposed her? Daydreaming again, are we? The voice slithered out from the shadows behind the drying racks. Naomi jumped, dropping a wet linen sheet into the murky water. Mr. Henderson, the steward, stepped into the pale gaslight. He was a man who moved with surprising quietness for his bulk. He held an apple in one hand, carving a slice with a small, silver penknife. "Mr. Henderson," Naomi stammered, wiping her hands on her apron. The linens for the guest wing need to be pressed before noon." "The guest wing," Henderson repeated, his eyes gleaming with a malice that made Naomi's blood run cold. He took a slow, crunching bite of the apple. "Big dinner tonight. Important guests. Lady Genevieve Sterling, Lord Harrington. Big names from London." Naomi felt the blood drain from her face. Harrington, the man who had signed the warrant for her father's arrest. If he saw her, if he recognized her. "You look pale, Ellie," Henderson said, stepping closer. He smelled of stale port and unwashed clothes. "Nervous?" "I am just tired, sir." "Tired." He chuckled, a wet, rasping sound. "You know, I was reading the London papers yesterday. Fascinating things. Newspapers. Full of stories about lost fortunes and runaway daughters." Naomi stopped breathing. The room seemed to tilt. Henderson reached out and touched a lock of hair that had escaped her cap. Naomi flinched, but she forced herself to stand her ground. To run now would be to admit guilt. "Gold hair," Henderson whispered. "Rare for a girl from the coal pits of York. And that accent, it slips, you know. When you're tired, when you think no one is listening." He leaned in, his lips brushing her ear. "I know who you are, Lady Naomi." The use of her title, spoken in this damp, stone dungeon of a laundry room, was more violent than a slap. "I don't know what you mean," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't play the fool. It insults us both," Henderson snapped, his demeanor shifting instantly from mocking to predatory. "There is a reward. £500. That is 10 years' wages for a man like me. Enough to buy a cottage in the seaside and leave this God-forsaken damp hole." "Please," Naomi gasped, grabbing his sleeve. "Please, Mr. Henderson, I didn't do anything. My father, I am innocent." "Innocence is a luxury for the rich, my dear. And you are no longer rich." He pulled his arm away, dusting off the sleeve where she had touched him. "However, I am a patient man. I don't need the money today. Maybe having a panicked aristocrat at my beck and call is worth more than £500. He pointed the penknife at her throat. "You will continue your work. But from now on, you work for me too. I want information. The Duke receives letters from the War Office. You clean his study. You will bring me anything marked confidential. Do you understand?" Naomi stared at him in horror. He wanted her to become a spy, to commit the very treason her father was accused of. "I can't," she wept. "He would kill me." "And I will hang you," Henderson smiled. "The choice is yours, my lady." He turned and waddled out of the laundry room, whistling a discordant tune. Naomi sank to the cold stone floor, her wet skirts pooling around her. She pressed her forehead against the cold rim of the wash basin and sobbed silently. She was trapped. Above her, a duke who knew her secret and played with her heart. Below her, a steward who held a noose around her neck. She had never felt more alone. The dining room of Blackwood Manor was a masterpiece of intimidation. The walls were panelled in dark oak, absorbed the light of the 200 candles in the crystal chandelier, casting long, flickering shadows. The table was set for 12, the silverware, polished by Naomi's own bleeding hands that morning, gleamed like weaponry. "Steady now," Mrs. Halloway hissed, adjusting Naomi's starch collar. "You are to serve the wine. Keep your head down. Don't speak unless spoken to. And for the love of God, don't spill." Naomi nodded. She felt like a ghost in her own life. She was wearing the stiff black uniform of a parlour maid, her hair pulled back so tightly it ached. The double doors opened. The guests drifted in, a sea of silk, velvet, and jewels. The laughter was high and brittle, the sound of people who had never known hunger. And there, at the head of the table, stood Julian. He was dressed in formal evening wear, the black tailcoat accentuating the breadth of his shoulders. He looked regal, untouchable, and utterly bored. His eyes scanned the room, disinterested, until they landed on Naomi standing by the sideboard. His gaze held hers for a fraction of a second, an anchor in the storm, before he turned to greet his guests. Julian, darling, Lady Genevieve Sterling swept into the room in a gown of crimson silk that cost more than Naomi's father's entire estate had been worth at the end. She was beautiful, sharp-featured, and had eyes like a hawk. You have been hiding away in the country for too long. London is positively drab without you. I find the country agrees with me, Genevieve, Julian said coolly, pulling out her chair. The air is cleaner, fewer snakes. Naomi flinched. She gripped the neck of the heavy wine decanter. The dinner was an agony of slow motion. Course after course, turtle soup, roasted pheasant, glazed carrots. Naomi moved around the table, pouring wine, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She reached Lord Harrington, the Minister of Defence. He was an older man with a walrus moustache and a monocle. He was currently pontificating about the Grace treason. A complete rot in the aristocracy, Harrington was saying, stabbing a piece of pheasant. Grace fooled us all, sold the naval schematics for a gambling debt. Coward took the easy way out, too. Suicide. And the daughter? Lady Genevieve asked, sipping her wine. Any sign of her? Naomi's hand shook. A single drop of red wine fell onto the white tablecloth near Harrington's elbow. It bloomed like a bloodstain. Harrington looked down. "Clumsy girl," he barked. "Apologies, my lord." "1,000 apologies," Naomi whispered, grabbing a napkin to dab at it. "Leave it," Harrington snapped. He looked up at her, squinting through his monocle. "Have we met, girl? You look familiar." The room went silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. Naomi froze. She felt the blood drain from her face. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. "She is a maid, Harrington." Julian's voice cut through the silence like a blade. He didn't raise his voice, but the authority in it was absolute. "You have likely seen 1,000 like her, and noticed none of them. Do not harass my staff." Harrington huffed, turning back to his plate. "Just a resemblance. There was a girl in the scullery at the club. Never mind." Naomi let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She moved to step back, to retreat into the shadows. "Ellie," Julian said. She stopped. He was looking at her. He held up his empty glass. "You haven't poured for me." It was a test. She knew it. He was daring her to come close to him in front of these people, to prove she could handle the fire. She walked to the head of the table. Her hand was trembling violently now. As she leaned in to pour the dark red vintage, the heavy silver bracelet she wore, a cheap servant's bangle, clinked against the fine crystal. Clink, clink, clink. The sound was deafening in the quiet room. "You are shaking," Julian said softly. "I am sorry, Your Grace." Suddenly, Julian's hand shot out. He covered her hand with his own, steadying the bottle. His skin was warm, his grip firm. It was a shocking breach of etiquette, a duke touching a servant's hand at the dinner table. Lady Genevieve audibly gasped. Harrington dropped his fork. Julian didn't look at them. He looked only at Naomi. His thumb brushed the pulse point of her wrist, feeling the frantic rabbit heartbeat there. "Breathe," he commanded, his voice low and intimate, meant only for her. "You are safe. Pour." Naomi drew a shuddering breath. She focused on his hand, on the strength of it. She poured the wine. Not a drop spilled. "Thank you, Ellie," he said, releasing her. She retreated to the wall, her legs feeling like jelly. "My word, Julian," Genevieve laughed nervously. "You are awfully hands-on with your domestics." "Good help is hard to find, Genevieve," Julian replied, taking a sip of the wine, his eyes still tracking Naomi as she exited the room. "And some things are too precious to let fall." Later that night. The house was finally asleep. The candles were snuffed out. Naomi was in the gallery, collecting the empty glasses. She felt exhausted, drained to her very soul. "You almost broke." She spun around. Julian was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame. He had loosened his tie, and his hair was tousled. He looked tired, but his eyes were blazing. "Lord Harrington recognized me," Naomi whispered. "Or he almost did. Harrington is a fool. He sees only what he expects to see. He expects a traitor's daughter to be in France, not serving him pheasant." Julian walked into the room. The moonlight streaming through the high windows turned the dust motes into silver glitter around him. "Why did you do that?" Naomi asked, her voice rising. "Touching my hand. You drew attention to me. You risked everything." "I steadied you," Julian countered, his voice hard. "You were about to drop the decanter. If you had dropped it, you would have drawn every eye in the room. You would have panicked, and then they would have seen you. Really seen you." He stopped inches from her. "I saved you, Naomi." "Don't call me that," she hissed, looking around frantically. "Please, Henderson." "He suspects." "Henderson?" Julian's brow furrowed. "The steward? He found a wanted poster. He knows." Naomi began to cry, the stress of the day finally breaking her. "He wants me to spy on you, to steal your papers, or he'll turn me in for the reward." Julian went very still. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The look on his face transformed from exhaustion to a terrifying, cold rage. It was the face of the Iron Duke. "He threatened you?" Julian asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes." "And what did you tell him?" "I told him nothing. I wanted to run, but I have nowhere to go." Julian reached out. This time he didn't pull back. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away the tears that streaked her soot-stained cheeks. "You are not going anywhere," he swore. "You are under my protection, and Mr. Henderson has just made a very distinct, very fatal error." "Julian, no," she sobbed, using his name for the first time in 3 years. "If you do anything to him, he will talk. He will tell everyone who I am." "Let him talk," Julian said ferociously. "Let him tell the world. Do you think I care about their gossip? Do you think I care about Harrington or the scandal? You should. You are a duke." "I am a man," he shouted, the sound echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "I am a man who watched the only woman he ever loved disappear because he was too proud to stop her. I won't make that mistake again." Naomi stared at him, shocked into silence. "Naomi," he whispered, leaning his forehead against hers. "I don't care if your father sold the whole bloody empire. You are not him. You are mine. You have always been mine." For a moment in the moonlight, the servant and the Duke ceased to exist. There was only the history between them, burning bright and hot. Julian tilted his head, his lips inches from hers. But before the kiss could land, a heavy thud echoed from the floor above. Then a shout. Then the unmistakable sound of a gunshot. Julian pulled back instantly, his soldier's instincts taking over. He looked toward the ceiling. "Stay here," he commanded. "Julian, lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." He turned and ran into the darkness of the corridor, leaving Naomi alone in the moonlight, the echo of his confession hanging in the air, and the smell of gunpowder drifting down from the upper floors. The echo of the gunshot didn't fade. It seemed to be absorbed by the heavy tapestries, trapped in the weave of the house itself. Naomi stood frozen in the moonlit gallery. Her hands were clamped over her mouth to stifle a scream. "Stay here," Julian had said. "Lock the door." But she couldn't. The silence that followed the shot was heavier than the noise itself. It was a suffocating, wet silence. She moved toward the double doors. Her servant's shoes, usually so noisy on the parquet, were silent now, dampened by her fear. She opened the door a crack. The grand staircase loomed ahead, a spiral of shadow. "He's dead." The voice drifted down from the landing. It was Lord Harrington. His voice wasn't panicked. It was annoyed, clipped as if he had found a smudge on his silverware. "Don't touch anything," Julian's voice replied. It was ice cold, the voice of the commander who had led men into the cannons at Khartoum. "Get back to your room, Harrington. This is a matter for the local constabulary, not the ministry. A man is dead in your study, Blackwood, shot with your own pistol by the looks of it." Naomi felt her knees give way. She slumped against the doorframe. Julian's pistol. Minutes later, heavy footsteps descended the stairs. Julian appeared. He had shed his dinner jacket. His white shirt was rolled up to the elbows, and there was a dark, terrifying smear of red on his right cuff. He didn't go to the front door to call for help. He came straight to the gallery. He pushed the door open, locking it behind him instantly. He found Naomi huddled in the corner. Is it Henderson?" she whispered, her voice shaking so hard the words were barely formed. Julian nodded grimly. He crouched down, not touching her, conscious of the blood on his sleeve. "He was in my study. He had broken into the safe. He was holding a stack of documents when he was shot." "You didn't—" Naomi couldn't finish the sentence. "No," Julian said, his eyes hard. "I didn't kill him. But someone did. Someone who knew exactly where my service revolver was kept in the desk drawer. Someone who walked into that room, executed him, and walked out before I could get up the stairs." "The papers," Naomi gasped, remembering Henderson's blackmail. "He told me to steal papers, confidential letters from the War Office." "He had them in his hand," Julian said. "But here is the strange part, Naomi. He wasn't stealing money. There was a pouch of gold sovereigns in the open safe, untouched. He died clutching a file from 1889, the file on the Naval Inquiry." Naomi's heart stopped. 1889. That was the year my father was accused. "Yes." Julian stood up and began to pace, the adrenaline making his movements sharp and jagged. This wasn't simple blackmail, Naomi. Henderson wasn't just a greedy steward. He was working for someone. Someone who needed that file destroyed or retrieved. And when Henderson got greedy or sloppy, his handler removed him. "Lord Harrington is upstairs," Naomi said, the realization dawning on her like a cold sunrise. "He recognized me at dinner. He hated my father. He signed the warrant." Julian stopped pacing. He looked at Naomi, and for the first time, she saw genuine fear in the Iron Duke's eyes. Not fear for himself, but fear for her. "If Harrington is behind this," Julian said softly, "then you are in grave danger. Henderson knew who you were. If Harrington killed Henderson, he might have done it to silence him about you as much as the papers." "I have to leave," Naomi cried, scrambling to her feet. "I have to go. Tonight. I'll run into the woods." "You will die in the woods," Julian snapped, grabbing her shoulders. "It is freezing rain, and the police will be crawling over this estate in an hour. A runaway maid in the middle of a murder investigation? They will hunt you down with dogs, Naomi. And if they find you and find out who you really are, you will hang for this murder. They will say the traitor's daughter killed the man who discovered her." "Then what do I do?" she sobbed, collapsing against his chest. She didn't care about the blood on his sleeve anymore. She needed his warmth. She needed his strength. Julian wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight, pressing her face into the hollow of his neck. He smelled of gunpowder and sandalwood. "We hide you," he whispered into her hair. "Not among the servants. That is no longer safe. We hide you where no one, not Harrington, not the police, not the staff, would ever dare to look." Naomi pulled back, looking up into his grey eyes. "Where?" "In my bed," Julian said. Naomi stared at him. "Julian, my private chambers have a connecting dressing room. There is a priest hole behind the wardrobe, a remnant from the Civil War. You will stay there. You will not make a sound. You will not exist until I find out who killed Henderson." "It will ruin you," she whispered, "if I am found in your room." "My reputation was ruined the day I walked away from you 3 years ago," Julian said fiercely. "I have nothing left to lose but you." He took her hand. "Come, we have to move before the police arrive." The following morning, Blackwood Manor was a cage. The rain had not ceased. It battered the windows like handfuls of gravel. Inside, the air was stale and thick with tension. The local constable had been and gone, replaced quickly by a team from Scotland Yard, summoned by Lord Harrington. Inspector Reed was a man who looked like he was carved out of driftwood, lean, weathered, and utterly humorless. He sat in the library, converting Julian's sanctuary into an interrogation room. Upstairs, in the suffocating darkness of the priest hole, Naomi sat with her knees pulled to her chest. The space was tiny, barely 4 feet wide. Through the cracks in the back of the heavy oak wardrobe, she could see a sliver of Julian's bedroom. She had been there for 8 hours. Her limbs were cramping, her throat parched. She heard the door to the bedroom open. Heavy boots. "I must insist, Your Grace." Inspector Reed's voice drifted through the wood. "I need to search the entire premises. A man has been murdered. A servant, no less. These crimes are usually domestic. A dispute over wages? A lover's quarrel? Search where you like, Inspector." Julian's voice was bored, languid. "But you are wasting your time in my dressing room. Henderson was killed in the study. The mud on the carpet suggests the killer entered from the terrace." "Perhaps," Reed murmured. Naomi could hear him opening drawers, shifting items on the vanity. "But we found something interesting in Henderson's room. A notebook. He kept detailed accounts of the staff. He seemed particularly interested in the new girl." "Ellie." "No last name." Naomi stopped breathing. "Ellie," Julian repeated calmly. "The maid who cleans the grates. What of her?" "She is missing, Your Grace," Reed said sharply. "She was not in her bed this morning. Her things are gone. A fleeing suspect is usually a guilty one." "She likely ran out of fear," Julian countered. "A country girl hears a gunshot and sees a dead body. She is probably halfway to York by now. Or she is closer than we think." Naomi saw the shadow of the inspector move across the sliver of light. He was walking toward the wardrobe. "Please, God, please." "Open this, if you please," Reed commanded. "It is full of my linens, Inspector," Julian said, his voice tightening imperceptibly. "Is this necessary?" "Procedure, Your Grace." The wardrobe door creaked open. Naomi squeezed her eyes shut. She was pressed into the hollow space behind the false back panel. If he tapped on the wood, if he noticed the depth was wrong. "Shirts," Reed grunted. "Waistcoats." He pushed the hangers aside. The wood of the false panel groaned slightly under the pressure of his hand. Naomi bit her lips so hard she tasted copper. "Nothing," Reed concluded. He slammed the wardrobe door shut. Naomi let out a breath that was barely a ghost of sound. "I want a dragnet of the woods," Reed said, his voice moving away. "If this Ellie is out there, I want her found. And Harrington is demanding an audience with you, Duke. He is in the morning room. Tell Lord Harrington I will be down shortly. I need to change my shirt. The door to the bedroom closed. Silence. Then a soft tapping on the wardrobe panel. Tap, tap, tap. It's safe, Julian whispered. The panel slid open. Naomi tumbled out, gasping for air, her limbs trembling uncontrollably. Julian caught her before she hit the floor. He lowered her onto the thick rug, kneeling beside her. "They are hunting me," she whispered, clutching his lapels. "They think I did it." "It buys us time," Julian said. His face was pale, the strain showing in the dark circles under his eyes. "As long as they are looking for Ellie the maid in the woods, they aren't looking for Lady Naomi Grace in my walls." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was crumpled, stained with a dark, rusty smear. Blood. Henderson's blood. "I managed to take this from the pile before Reed secured the crime scene," Julian said. "It's a page from the file Henderson was stealing." Naomi's hands shook as she took the paper. It was a naval transcript, dated 3 days before her father's alleged treason. She scanned the dense text. Her eyes widened. "This," she stammered. "This is a transcript of a meeting between the Prussian attaché and Lord Harrington." "Read the bottom line," Julian urged. "Authorization for transfer of schematics approved by Minister H. Payment to be routed through the Callaway accounts to obscure origin." Naomi let out a strangled cry. "He framed him. Harrington sold the secrets himself. He used my father's bank accounts to hide the money." "Your father was the scapegoat," Julian said, his voice vibrating with suppressed fury. "Harrington has been the traitor all along. That's why he's here. He didn't come for the party. He came because he knew Henderson had found this file. Henderson was trying to blackmail Harrington, not me." "So Harrington killed him," Naomi whispered. "And now he's downstairs drinking your tea." "He is a cornered rat," Julian said. "And a cornered rat is dangerous. But we have the evidence now. We can clear your name, Naomi. We can give this to the inspector." "Inspector Reed works for the government." Naomi shook her head frantically. "If we give this to him, it might disappear. Harrington is the Minister of Defense. He controls the police." Julian grabbed her hand. "You are right. We can't trust Reed. We need to get this to the press, to the Times. If the story breaks publicly, they can't bury it." "But how?" Naomi asked. "I can't leave this room. You are being watched." Julian looked at the window. The rain was lashing against the glass. "Tonight is the masquerade ball," he said slowly, a plan forming in his eyes. "The ball?" Naomi looked at him like he was mad. "A man is dead. Surely you cancelled it." "Harrington insisted we proceed," Julian said with a dark smile. "He said it would be bad for morale to cancel. He wants the crowd. He thinks a crowd provides cover. But he is wrong. A crowd provides chaos." He stood up, pulling Naomi with him. He walked her to the heavy velvet curtains. "You are going to the ball, Naomi." "What?" "You said you hid among the servants," Julian said, his gaze intense. "Now you will hide among the masters. It is a masquerade. Everyone will be in masks. I still have your mother's old dress, the blue velvet one she left here years ago. It's in the attic storage. I will get it. Julian, this is insanity. If I am caught—" "If you stay here, you are a sitting duck," he interrupted. "We need to get you out of the house, to the train station. The only way out is through the ballroom." During the final waltz, the servants open the terrace doors for the fireworks. That is your chance. I will create a diversion. You will slip out, run to the stables, take my horse, and ride for the telegraph office in the village. He cupped her cheek. His touch was the only steady thing in a world that was spinning off its axis. "One dance," he whispered. "We finally get our dance, and then you run like the wind." Naomi looked at the blood-stained paper in her hand, the proof of her father's innocence, the key to her freedom. She looked up at the Duke, the man who was risking his life, his title, and his honor for her. "One dance," she agreed. But as Julian turned to leave, to fetch the dress, a sound came from the hallway, the heavy turn of a key in the lock. Julian froze. He tried the handle. Locked. "My apologies, Your Grace," Inspector Reed's voice came through the door. "But until my investigation is complete, I cannot have anyone wandering the house. For your own safety, of course." They were trapped. Julian looked at Naomi. The color drained from his face. The hunter had just locked them in the cage together. And the masquerade was only hours away. The lock on the bedroom door was heavy iron, but the house of Blackwood held secrets older than Inspector Reed. "The priest hole," Naomi whispered, her mind racing back to the architectural sketches she had dusted in the library. "It doesn't just end behind the wardrobe. The original blueprints. It leads to the wine cellar." Julian's eyes lit up. "The cellar opens directly into the service corridor behind the ballroom." They moved in silence, down the suffocatingly narrow stone chute, through cobwebs that clung like spectral fingers. When they emerged into the cool damp of the cellar, they were no longer Duke and servant. They were conspirators. An hour later, the masquerade was in full swing. The ballroom was a kaleidoscope of Venetian masks, swirling silks, and the dizzying lilt of a Strauss waltz. The air smelled of expensive perfume and impending doom. At the top of the grand staircase, two figures appeared. Julian wore a black domino mask, his presence commanding silence even without a word. Beside him stood a woman in a gown of midnight blue velvet, a dress retrieved from the depths of the attic, smelling faintly of lavender and memory. Her face was hidden by a mask of silver lace. They descended. The crowd parted. "Who is she?" Whispers rippled through the room like a draft. "Look at how he holds her." They didn't stop to greet anyone. Julian led her straight to the center of the floor. He took her waist. His hand was warm, possessive, an anchor in the terrifying sea of eyes. "Ready?" he murmured. "No," Naomi breathed, clutching the blood-stained evidence hidden in her glove. "Good." They danced. It was a waltz of defiance. They spun past Lord Harrington, who stood near the orchestra, sipping champagne with a smug satisfaction. He watched them, his eyes narrowing behind his gold mask. He didn't recognize the dress. He didn't recognize the woman. He only saw the Duke flaunting a new conquest. As the music swelled to its crescendo, Julian spun Naomi so she faced the orchestra. He signaled the conductor with a sharp cut of his hand. The music died instantly. The dancers stumbled to a halt. The silence was deafening. "Lord Harrington," Julian's voice rang out, projecting to the back of the hall. "You seem to be enjoying the hospitality of the man you tried to frame." Harrington stiffened. "I beg your pardon, Blackwood. Have you had too much punch?" "I think not." Julian stepped back, leaving Naomi standing alone in the center of the circle. "I believe this lady has something that belongs to you." Naomi's hands trembled, but she forced her spine straight. She reached up and untied the ribbons of her silver mask. It fell to the floor. Gasps erupted. A glass shattered somewhere in the back. "Lady Naomi! The traitor's daughter!" Harrington's face went the color of ash. He lunged forward. "Seize her! She is a fugitive! Inspector Reed!" Inspector Reed emerged from the crowd, flanked by two constables. "Lady Naomi Grace," Reed barked, "you are under arrest for the murder of—" "I am not the murderer, Inspector!" Naomi cried out, her voice clear and piercing. She pulled the crumpled, bloodied paper from her glove and held it high. "I am the witness. This document was in Mr. Henderson's hand when he died. It is signed by Lord Harrington. It authorizes the sale of the naval secrets. My father was innocent. Harrington killed him to cover his tracks, just as he killed Henderson to get this back." Harrington drew a pistol from his coat, a small, deadly derringer. "Lies! She's lying!" He aimed at Naomi, but he was too slow. Julian was already there. With the ferocity of the soldier he once was, the Duke tackled the minister. The gun went off, the bullet shattering the crystal chandelier above, sending a rain of glass down upon the screaming crowd. Julian pinned Harrington to the parquet floor, his forearm crushing the man's windpipe. "It's over, Harrington," Julian snarled. "The game is done." Inspector Reed picked up the fallen paper. He read the text, then looked at the signature. He looked at the sobbing Naomi, then at the pinned minister. "Constables," Reed said, his voice grim. "Take the minister into custody." As they dragged the cursing Harrington away, the room remained frozen. Naomi stood amidst the broken glass, her chest heaving. She looked at Julian, who was rising to his feet, brushing glass from his coat. He walked to her. He didn't care about the crowd. He didn't care about the whispers. He knelt before her, right there in the center of the ballroom, and took her scarred, servant's hands in his own. "You missed a spot," he whispered, brushing a tear from her cheek. Naomi laughed, a broken, beautiful sound. "I resign, Your Grace." "Accepted?" Julian smiled, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I have a vacancy for a duchess, however. The hours are long, but the company is significantly better." And that is the story of the lady who scrubbed floors to save her life, and the Duke who loved her enough to burn down his own world to protect her. Naomi Grace didn't just clear her name that night. She rewrote her destiny. They say that for years afterward, the Duchess of Blackwood would always personally inspect the fireplaces in the manor, just to remind herself that even in the ashes, you can find a diamond. What did you think of Julian's plan? Would you have been brave enough to walk into that ballroom? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of romance, betrayal, and justice, please hit that like button. It helps the channel immensely. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a scandal. I'll see you in the next story.